I held Ayaan in my hands. I was subconsciously looking for a breath, but I knew I saw none. That got me slightly worried.
On March 18th, Mandai Wildlife Group welcomed Ayaan, its first orangutan conceived through artificial insemination and delivered via caesarean-section. Charlie, Mandai's oldest male Sumatran orangutan, and Chomel, a granddaughter of the famous Ameng, were chosen for the breeding program. At 48 years old and no living descendants to his name, Charlie's window for reproduction is rapidly closing.
We want as broad and as wide a genetic profile for the population as possible. That means all breeding individuals has got an equal amount of offspring that carries on their genetic profile and bloodline. There's no representation of his bloodline, and once he passed on, that will be the end of his entire genetic profile, not only within Singapore Zoo, but throughout the entire regional program. We selected Chomel because of her very good maternal instinct. She actually is a mother of 3, and then she also surrogate and raised 2 other orangutan babies that are not hers. So in terms of temperament, behavior, maternal instinct, she is our best choice. We tried the natural route first, so natural breeding between Charlie and Chomel, but Charlie has got no interest. He doesn't display any interest in Chomel. So we attempted artificial insemination. This is actually the 3rd time, and Ayaan was successfully conceived on the 28th of July last year. Chomel had an uneventful pregnancy at the 1st trimester, but when she goes into her 2nd trimester of the pregnancy, we notice vaginal bleeding. There are 2 episodes in total, but of course, we feel that this is something not normal, and after heavy discussion with the vet team, we decided to give it a very extensive check.
It was absolutely nerve-wracking. Everything went so smoothly since we started the procedure in July, and when she bled in January, we obviously were extremely worried. Certainly harrowing, to say the least, and we had to do an immediate ultrasound scan to be sure the baby was fine. This then is the placenta. You can see that it's a previa because the placenta shouldn't be here. It should be somewhere at the other side of the uterus. The placenta is blocking the birth canal, which is this area over here. Once we diagnosed placenta previa, we knew immediately that we had to go in at some point, and that's when the team started mustering help from anywhere we could find. In fact, we had a human obstetrics and gynecology specialist, a pediatric specialist, as well as a veterinary surgical specialist. With all these minds combined, we then worked out a plan to ensure that Chomel makes it through this pregnancy and Ayaan is delivered a healthy young baby. We had to limit the number of people in the surgery on that day. So a lot of the spectators, a lot of the concerned keepers were all waiting outside here, looking in, and it's also unfortunate we do not have a microphone in there, and with all the worried looks on our faces, I think that also got the crowd outside slightly worried. This is the exact surgical table that Chomel was on. We got ourselves sorted very quickly when she was on the surgical table. Once we hooked her up to anesthesia, we began the surgery. For vets, whenever we do caesarean sections, we make a very large incision over the womb and retrieve the baby, usually en masse, with us scooping the baby out. The technique that's used for human caesarean sections is very different. In fact, the small incision is made and the baby is pushed through the small incision. That's certainly a new technique for us veterinary surgeons. I remember very distinctly pushing on the uterus and breaking a sweat. And the surgical specialist that was with me was also starting to get worried because we seemed to be not progressing very quickly with the delivery of Ayaan. But when Ayaan's head popped out through the uterus, I think we all were very relieved, and we knew that at that point that we just needed to get him out as quickly as possible. There was a lot of tension in the room because there was visually a lot of blood that was coming out from her abdomen.
It took the team 20 minutes to retrieve Ayaan from Chomel's womb.
I held Ayaan in my hands. I was subconsciously looking for a breath, but I knew I saw none. That got me slightly worried. But for my focus, I just needed to ensure that I handed Ayaan over to the pediatrics team for any form of resuscitation that needed to be done. So whilst I was extremely worried whether Ayaan would make it or not, in fact, as we were stitching Chomel up, we did ask, hey, was there any signs of life in Ayaan? Fortunately, at the 7-minute mark, we had news that Ayaan was alive and kicking, which was great. Chomel and Ayaan are now back in their habitat and ready to see all the guests to come to our parks. In fact, I just saw them today, and it's incredibly humbling and also extremely heartening for me as a veterinary surgeon.
Ayaan is currently having the best of his life. He is basically eating and sleeping most of the time. He's still too young for us to look at his personality and all that. But we will be able to tell when he is 2 or 3 years old. Then we will see whether if he is a very playful, mischievous individual or he's a very chill individual compared to some of the orangutans over here. Charlie has not met Ayaan, and this is actually quite natural. In the animal kingdom or in orangutan history, the males generally do not partake in child rearing. They did their job with the insemination, and then after that they move on with their life. So the child rearing is solely on the mother. And this is very much alike in the nature also.
Ayaan represents the next generation of Sumatran orangutans with Charlie's genes, and it was great to be part of this entire conservation effort for the species.